Welcome to Keeping Up with Jones, the Lonnie Jones podcast adventure. You are going to hear the stories from the eclectic life of a guy who is a professional counselor, a family man, a SWAT team chaplain, outdoor enthusiast, a guy involved with ropes, 10th Planet Jiu-jitsu, a chaotic Jedi, and who is a recipient of an honorary doctorate from the University of Adversity. Using these stories, we take the facts lead to concepts, and from the concepts, we make a variety of life applications. Just a caveat about the facts. Most of the time, we will tell you the facts just the way it happened, but once in a while, we'll give you the facts the way other people remember how it happened, and that usually includes a tablespoon of embellishment. No harm is meant, just good, clean fun for educational purposes. Please subscribe and share this with your friends or your enemies. It might help them to be better people if they listen. As always, we thank you for keeping up with Jones, the Lonnie Jones podcast adventure. Introducing the Bible degree with digital ministry. Paul used the marketplace and the synagogue to reach an expanded audience. We have access to the internet and social media. I once heard it said that when McDonald's introduced the drive-through window, they did not change the Big Mac, only how it was delivered. Faulkner University is now offering a new digital ministry track for their Bible degree. Faulkner's degree provides training in understanding and teaching the gospel, alongside training that will allow students to create quality digital content. Opportunities for evangelism in the digital spaces is unlimited, and this is innovative ministry education for our contemporary culture. One of the instructors is a 2-time Emmy-winning former ESPN designer. Members of the Church of Christ could be eligible for the full tuition Jack Zorn Scholarship in order to pursue this special area of study. For more information, contact admissions at faulkner.edu. That is admissions at faulkner.edu. Faulkner University is a digital partner with Keeping Up with Jones, the Lonnie Jones podcast adventure. This is a little long and rambly, and part of it is processing, part of it's a little bit therapeutic, I guess. I've always considered myself sort of an aficionado in self-defense. Jackie said that after she saw me wrestle somebody for the first time, it was the only time that she'd ever seen me look graceful or athletic. Everything I've ever done, my climbing, my racquetball has just been, with the motto, forget the force, just use force. But I goofed around with self-defense, having taught myself some things, having been taught some other things. But I had this system. It was a mixture of catch wrestling and Aikido. And, I felt like I was pretty competent. Well, in the spring of 1993, one of the young men that would come to my house regularly, and we would work in the backyard on things martial, John Jenkins came to my house and wanted to wrestle. He said, "Hey, I've been taking this class for 4 months, and I really wanted to kind of proof of concept reality test it on you and see if it worked." And so I was his test dummy because he and I had wrestled many, many times before, and he'd never fared very well. He was formally trained and proficient in a striking art, but striking art doesn't work unless one can manage the distance. And wrestlers and grapplers are in the clinch business. We take away the distance, and business is good. Well, on this particular Sunday afternoon, the business went bad because John began to re-educate me and introduced me to this thing that he called Brazilian Jiu-jitsu. He had been studying with Triad Martial Arts in Cullman, Alabama, and Brazilian Jiu-jitsu became an activity that I began to pursue with some amount of passion. I dabbled in this art form on and off. I would study tapes. I would rent tapes. I would attend classes when I could. I'd watch the UFC. I even was an early subscriber to this website called Submissions 101, and it may have been one of the first online training things in the budding digital world. I trained on and off with Triad Martial Arts. I worked out with the cops. We would meet each other, and without any formal instruction, without any kind of structure at all, we would just get together in this old abandoned cheerleading gym and murder each other. Eventually, Dustin Rhodes from Alliance Jiu-Jitsu, a student of Jacare, came to town and opened up a school. And I got to train with him quite a bit. In fact, I trained with him privately for about 6 months as he prepared for the World Games. I was basically his sparring dummy. And eventually, my journey would lead me to a style of Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu known as 10th Planet Jiu-Jitsu. It was the year that I had recovered from my 4th abdominal surgery. I had had an intestine rupture in 2009. They had redone my piping that same year. I had to have some gallbladder work done, and then the surgeon who did my gallbladder rebuilt my abdomen from the inside out and installed my first or second round of mesh. Cody Gothard went with me, and it was on June the 5th, 2010, and we went to an Eddie Bravo seminar hosted by Brandon McGathern at Webster's Karate. He and I walked in, and I was sporting an abdominal scar that was exactly 9 inches long and 9 weeks and 4 days old. And we walked in and signed our release papers and sat down in the corner of the room again to fill it with grapplers. And you can expect what this crowd looked like. Cage fighters and grapplers. Muscles, tattoos, mohawks, rash guards. I was in a t-shirt, a red t-shirt that looked like it had been ripped in the front and had the word Blood Guard written underneath it. That's a personal meaning for me, but I was in my Blood Guard t-shirt and a pair of sweatpants. Eventually, as the room began to fill up, these two very fit, very athletic, and I might say very attractive young ladies entered the mat room as well. I looked at Cody. I said, if something goes wrong with me, if something reoccurs with my health and I collapse on this mat, do we need to review who in this room is allowed to resuscitate me and who is not? Cody said, no, sir. I think we're clear on this. It was at this seminar that I learned the lockdown from Eddie Bravo. And this began my pursuit of 10th Planet Jiu-Jitsu under Brandon McGathern. Brandon would tell you that I'm the person who showed him his first submission years earlier when he and some guys that I wrestled with at the retreat for the UNA Christian Student Center, he and some guys tried to throw me in the lake, and I did not go in the lake. But now, some years later, Brandon is teaching jiu-jitsu, and the circle had become complete, and the student was indeed the master. I think at this time, Brandon was just a blue belt under Eddie Bravo, but he was training on his own and teaching himself and then going out to California and spend a week at a time with Eddie Bravo. In the jiu-jitsu world, he's known as BMAC. BMAC is now a 3rd degree black belt and is internationally known, and as well as being in the 10th Planet Hall of Fame, along with his sensei, Eddie Bravo, and guys like Boogie Martinez, just to mention a few. In 2013, on May 9th, I attended one of BMAC's seminars, and he had hosted a seminar with Chris Herzog. Chris Herzog came to Decatur, Alabama, and it was at that seminar that they gave me a blue belt. I'd experienced a few more problems with my guts, but I kept training as much as I could. I would show up every now and then to what we call the cop gym. Jerry King and Charles Brooks was working out with Dustin Rhodes, and they were kind of partnering with this mixed martial arts gym. They were doing some actual cage fighting, and then they were training. I think Dustin had a program called Cage Fighter, Street Fighter, and Crime Fighter. In 2019, I got on a really, really good run, and I did a stint where I would go to BMAC's gym in Decatur every week for months. You see, I was working with a contract in Decatur. I would spend half a day over there doing therapy. But I would go the first half of the day and I would do Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, and the other half I would do the therapy. In my mind, I was getting paid to do Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. Brandon was experimenting with some online curriculum. He'd showed this move that he called the flow, and then you would progress through a different program each week, and you had to turn in 50 reps of this specific technique. And at the end of the 30-day period, you're going to end up with 200 reps. During that time, I was attending the classes weekly, and I completed the triangle course, the anaconda, the truck course, the leg lock course, and one other. And thanks to some guys who would visit my home gym so I could get in my required reps, guys like Stephen Weber and Troy Farmer and Shay Knops and Wesley Widener, Uh, we were even in North Carolina one time, and I was behind on my reps. And Ben Hayes and I were doing this marriage seminar, and we got back to the hotel that night. I said, Ben, I've got a really weird favor to ask you. I've got to do 25 reps of an inverted entry to a triangle choke, and I need to do that. And we cleared out the furniture in the lobby of our hotel room, and Ben let me put him in a triangle choke 25 times on a non-padded carpeted floor. You can't buy friends like that. It was a good few months. I'd gotten into the depth of my travel series, and then I began to attend less classes, and eventually the contract ended, and I wasn't going over to Decatur very much. I got this random phone call from a young lady named Nakaya. Nakaya is the repeat champion of the women's PGF, and on this phone call, she just simply said, Mr. Lonnie, when are you going to be back in the Monday class? I was vague and told her I really wasn't sure. My schedule was kind of a dumpster fire. And exactly a week later, I get this phone call on a Monday morning. Actually, it was a text, and Brandon said, hey, is there any way you could come to my 1 o'clock class today? And I was like, hey, if you need something, I'll be there. I've often gone over to the Decatur gym to be a guest on Brandon's podcast, or to talk to him about something, or for just to hang out and talk. He's a very special friend to me, and I'd do anything he asked me to do. So I drove over to Decatur expecting to go to like a 1 o'clock class, do a workout, and then probably do a podcast or something. Little did I know that on June 24th, 2019, he had asked me there so he could present me with a purple belt. It was June 24, 2019, and you can see it on YouTube. It's on Brandon's YouTube channel. It's on my YouTube channel. It's called Lonnie Jones Purple Belt Promotion. I never in my wildest dreams imagined I'd ever have a purple belt. You see, I'm not a competitor. I've never been to a tournament. I've never competed live. And honestly, Brandon will say in the presentation that I had gone past my athletic prime. I wasn't in the best of shape. I'm strictly a hobbyist, and my pursuit was pure self-defense, and so my skills for competition or aggression are below that of a competition level belt of any color. Nonetheless, Brandon in his mind thought I had earned a purple belt. And to be completely transparent, that purple belt means as much to me as my master's degree, with the exception of being down for various surgeries and injuries. I've not missed a week of instruction, either by teaching in my garage, at the police academy, or doing one of my Grappling With Life seminars since earning that belt. In fact, I dedicated my first year of being a purple belt to teaching other people rather than being taught myself. During this time, Captain King, Jerry King's underground grassroots jiu-jitsu that we were secretly calling Blue Jitsu, was gaining traction. And eventually our department adopted Gracie Survival Tactics, a version of the Brazilian Jiu-jitsu, as our defensive tactics program. Chief McMurray and the guys at the police academy gave me the opportunity and the honor to be allowed to participate in this. And not only did they let me participate in the training, they allowed me to certify as both a level 1 and level 2 instructor. This was extremely humbling and extremely honoring in my mind, in that I was the only civilian instructor for the department. One time I was in the defensive tactics room, and we were doing Red Man Day with the cadets, and it was my job to hold this kid down. And he was a rather large, very athletic young man, and I was outclassed by size, but a trained man will defeat an untrained man with monotonous regularity. So he rolled me over, but I switched my position, so I had him in a triangle choke and an arm bar at the same time. Now, the new academy building had just opened, and while I had this young man in this compromised position, Chief McMurray walks in with some executives and people in suits and ladies in skirts and high heels, and he was giving some kind of a tour of the building, and I heard him glibly say, "And that is one of our chaplains." During one of my defensive tactic classes, during one of my GST classes, I tore my tricep tendon, and I ended up training that entire summer with one arm, having learned that trick from a guy named Matt Scaff. You just simply take the injured arm and hide it under your rash guard, and you learn to roll with one hand. And I only rolled with guys that I trusted, I knew weren't going to hurt me. but I trained that whole summer with an injured arm. It is a common myth that once one overcomes a traumatic injury, they get promoted. I trained that entire summer with one arm and yet remain a purple belt. On March 26th of 2020, I got to be the guest on Adler TV. This is a young man who works as an engineer for the Rick and Bubba show, and he'd invited me to their studio to record a version of his podcast, and he wanted to talk about my book, Grappling With Life, and he wanted to talk about my purple belt. And then after the show, young Mr. Adler pursues Brazilian Jiu-jitsu. He had brought some mats to the studio and wanted us to just roll a little bit. Now, traditional Brazilian Jiu-jitsu guys don't know leg locks. The guys who train with 10th Planet either learn leg locks or die. And then there's footage of this on Adler's YouTube channel of us rolling around. And again, a trained person will beat an untrained person with monotonous regularity. So like 3 years later, the guys on Rick and Bubba are talking about this episode. And typically, the Rick and Bubba did, guerrilla marketing. They never talked about anybody else's show or anybody else's product, but they were talking about Adler having had me in the studio as a guest, and they were talking about us wrestling together. Greg had been in the studio at the time, and he was talking about how bad the wrestling had gone for Adler. But in repeating the story, Adler made a few mistakes. He first of all told everybody I repeatedly wrist locked him. Now, I am a wrist locker, but I didn't use it on him. And then he told everybody that I was like a brown belt. I posted an apology on Facebook to correct the error. I wanted everybody to know that I didn't think I was a brown belt and didn't claim to be a brown belt. On December the 9th, 2023, I got a random phone call from Tyler Sperlin. Tyler's a good friend of mine. He moved here from Colorado to train under B Mac, and so that he and I could be friends and pursue Christianity together. We do an awful lot of spiritual discussions. I love this young man and his young, beautiful family. Anyway, he calls this random thing. Hey, is there any way you're going to be at the gym today for open mat? And I rarely train on Saturday simply because, number one, I travel a lot of Saturdays, and when I'm not traveling, I either stay home or hunt. In my mind, this was vaguely reminiscent to the random call I got when they surprised me with my purple belt promotion. I skipped hunting and drove to Decatur. To put this in context, on January 27th, about 12 months earlier, after I had sparred with and been drilling partners with the UK Grappling Championship, and we had been using this technique known as the twister. It was all about back control, taking control of a guy, pinning one of his legs and twisting his body. After I'd done this with this middleweight or heavyweight UK grappler, I was on a hunting trip at Daryl Pickles with Ben Hayes when I realized that my abdominal mesh had yet failed again and torn. I had a protrusion of my intestines about the size of the bottom of a Coke bottle, and I ended up with yet another abdominal surgery. And in spite of the third world medicine at Helen Keller Memorial, one unnamed surgeon, and thanks to the expertise of Dr. Roni Najjar, my life was again spared. Yeah, my jiu-jitsu had taken a hit. I went down to 164 pounds, but I recovered, and I began to train again after my 8 or 9 weeks were up. That was in January, and this is December. I had come back from yet another, if not life-altering, life-threatening injury, and I drove to Decatur expecting to get my brown belt. It is a common myth that once one overcomes and trains through a traumatic injury, they'll get promoted. I drove to Decatur thinking I'd come home with a brown belt, only to come home with the same colored belt I'd left home with. I was as embarrassed as I was disappointed because of my childlike expectations. I felt ridiculous. I felt like I was guilty of hubris. I was chagrined, and I never told anyone this but Jackie until now. If this program airs on time, it should be published on November 18th, 2025. I will have had surgery number 10 on my abs yesterday, November 17th, 2025. My mesh has failed again, and I've got another tear in my abdomen. And my active jiu-jitsu career will officially be over. That is on advice from my doctor and some serious discussions with people I respect and they can articulate the particular nuances between dedication, intentional adversity, tenacity, and stupidity. And I'm taking their advice. The last two people to officially roll with me at speed end up being two of my really, really close friends and heroes, Tony Bryant and Jason Brightwell. I won't be doing active jiu-jitsu anymore. I won't be doing jiu-jitsu anymore, at least not in public. I won't lose my purple belt because I stopped training. They won't come and take my purple belt from me. And I really won't lose what I already know. I just won't be using it. I'll give some of my rash guards away. And even though I'll retain the knowledge, at some point the technique will fade. My cardio, and it's a different kind of cardio when you do that kind of thing, my cardio for that kind of thing will diminish. And as other people train longer and other people train harder, the fact that I have a purple belt will be inconsequential. I'll be an inactive purple belt. And at some point, that point will be moot. Having fallen in love with your spouse, chosen to love your spouse, or having been married to your spouse X number of years is of little value if your love, care, kindness, tenderness, willingness to overlook flaws, faults, and failures is not practiced regularly. If you stop being kind and affectionate and caring, if you stop and become inactive, they won't come in and take your marriage certificate away. But having it won't matter. The same is true of being in shape, having saved money, being out of debt, losing weight, or being saved. If you don't continue to practice and actively participate in it, it will likely end up being the same as not having it. Maybe we choose to quit. Maybe we are forced to quit. Maybe we have to quit. Maybe somebody tells us to or makes us quit. Maybe we just got hurt and quit so we wouldn't get hurt again. Trust me, I completely understand that. Or maybe we just get complacent and we just don't continue to do. We just start to become inactive and we think we can get by on what we have done, have accomplished, or what things used to be or used to be like. Inactive belt ranks don't retain their sharpness, their discipline, their passion, their fluidity, their ease of movement, or their competence. Inactive spouses, athletes, artists, friends, students, and Christians all suffer the same fate. Now, they've already invited me to drop in by the gym. Brandon's already suggested that I go to Vegas for PGF this year. And Jerry King said, hey, just sometimes show up and hang out. Let me tell you, it's hard to go and not participate. It's hard to be in the room and not be one of them. It's hard to be in the room and not be able to do what they do, be what they are. Oh, listen, they'd let me teach technique, and no one, and I mean no one, would ever say anything to me or about me if I didn't participate in rolling, what we call live sparring. But I can't do that. I refuse to be a person who talks the talk, but does not walk the walk. Going to the gym will never be the same as being active as a gym member. Going to your house where your family lives will never be the same as going to your home and being a part of or with your family. Attached, attentive, interactive, present, loving, serving. Those are all the live drills of living and loving people. Going to a house of worship will never be the same as being a worshiper. Saying prayers will never be the same as being a prayer or a person of prayer. Talking about your faith will never be the same as being a person of faith or being a faithful person. We don't rank those kind of things. We don't give colored belts to friends, neighbors, parents, spouses, or Christians. But the difference in being active and inactive, the difference in being complacent or growing. Those are the things that show our true colors. Using the tool of shortwave radio, World Christian Broadcasting literally covers the world every day with the gospel. They use 2 large curtain antennas. One is located in Anchor Point, Alaska, and the other in Madagascar. They send out messages that are recorded at their international home in Franklin, Tennessee. They make available 40 hours of broadcast every day. The broadcasts are made in English, Chinese, Russian, Spanish, Portuguese, Korean, English for Africa, and Arabic. They would love for your group to visit them. You can bring your ladies group, your youth group, or your men's group. Just give them a call at 615-371-8707, 615-371-8707, or you can go to 3Ws and a dot, worldchristian.org, find the Donate Here button, and make a financial contribution to support this work that literally covers the world every day with the gospel. World Christian Broadcasting, in cooperation with Keeping Up with Jones, the Lonnie Jones podcast adventure.